Hey guys and girls, what's up? It's Trent here doing a brand new review, and today I want to look at Lightning Returns Final Fantasy XIII, an action RPG developed by Square Enix. Now the thing with me and RPGs is that they take a long time to finish, and my playthrough took about 5 weeks to finish, and I clocked in at around about 62 hours. And naturally I've got a lot to talk about as there's so much going on in the game. And by the end of this review, I hope to offer my own personal opinions about what I thought about it, whether I thought it was a good cap to the trilogy, and did we receive closure? Was there finality in this final game? I'm hoping to explain that by the end of this review. So with that being said, we're going to get started on story, and we're going to find out, will Lightning ever truly be happy again? Lightning Returns is the third and final installment in the Fabula Nova Chrysalia series, flowery name I know, and occurs 500 years after the events in Final Fantasy XIII-2. Our heroine Lightning finally awakens from her crystal stasis in Valhalla 13 days before the end of the world. Destiny has not been kind to our hardened veteran Lightning, who has now been appointed saviour by the god Bunabalza. Lightning has been tasked with saving as many souls as possible from this world before the new world is recreated, and is promised to be reunited with her lost sister Sarah when the task is complete. Lightning is reunited once again with old allies such as Saz, Fang, Snow, Hope and Vanille, some of which have changed drastically. There is a whole new world called Nova Chrysalia to explore, with varying landscapes and secrets to uncover. Series staples such as Moogles, Cactuars and Chocobos also return in exciting Technicolor, and the game places a much bigger emphasis on open world gameplay and side quests. This iteration also carries on with the Gods and Crystals theme prevalent in the previous games, and we finally get to see if Lightning is more than just a cold-hearted mercenary. Having finished the entire trilogy myself with 100% completion, I know I'm a complete geek. Something has always remained the same with me concerning the story, which is, why does it have to be so needlessly complicated? Dialogue and conversations between minor and key characters are often way too complicated than it needs to be. Instead of just giving us the necessary information about a set piece or a character, so to speak, it all comes across way too elaborate and far too wordy for my liking. It's not bad in Lightning Returns as it is in 13 and 13-2, but you still might be tempted to skip certain scenes in the game, especially with some of the side quests, which are another story entirely. But I really truly do believe that this is the best story out of the trilogy, overcomplicated and far-fetched as it may seem. The voice acting was solid, the pacing was swift, and the end of days theme in the story was a breath of fresh air to experience in an RPG. Finally, this chapter also offers some really good twists which genuinely surprised me, and the beautiful ending was well worth grinding those 60 plus hours to see. I have the same problems with Lightning Returns as I did with the first two previous games, is that it's still far too complicated, which is ironic because if you look at the story from beginning, middle, end, all three games, the themes and the pathos and the mythology behind it is actually really quite unique and fascinating. Sadly, the story has always been overdone, a whole lot of waffle, and a whole lot of meh. And it's sad, but I truly do believe, like I said before, that this is the best out of the trilogy. But I am really waiting for Square Enix to come back at me like they did with Final Fantasy X and just hit me in the heart. You know, hit it where it hurts the most, and I'm still waiting for that. But for now, story wasn't too bad at all. Characters, if we're referring to Lightning, who takes front and centre in this game, obviously, it's called Lightning Returns, I didn't really like her at first. In 13, I thought she was more of a carbon copy of Cloud in Final Fantasy VII. They have the same traits, the same personality, albeit they are two very different characters altogether, with different passions and motivations and drives. I have grown to like Lightning more over time, and I'm hoping to explain why here. I found Lightning to be a lot more endearing in this chapter, and we finally get to see the emotional layers of her character, and her icy facade begins to melt away over time. As the saviour, Lightning is more charitable this time around, often listening and agreeing to do tasks for people, however insincere and indifferent she may seem on the outside. It's funny to see how well Lightning actually converses with other people in the game while still maintaining her aloofness. She has grown so much more on me as a character, and all I can say is Lightning is one badass of a character. Familiar faces also appear, and as stated earlier, have changed considerably over the last 500 years. Snow is now a celebrated patron in the city of Yusnan, and his sickly "I am the hero" attitude has finally started tapering off, thank God, if only but for a minute. Vanille is now a saint residing in the holy city of Luxurion, where she now has the ability to hear the voices of the dead. Fang is a leader of the bandit faction in the Dead Dunes called the Monoculus, and secretly I still love her thick Australian accent. I think it's marvellous. Noel is now a shadow hunter and is still determined to change the future to save him and his beloved Yule. Saz is now a very different person and seems to be in between a rock and a hard place, and for the sake of not spoiling it for you guys, I won't be elaborating on this. The ever so adorable Mog from Final Fantasy XIII 2 is now the leader of the Moogles who have taken their home among nature in the wildlands. And finally we have a new character called Lumina who looks almost exactly like Sarah, albeit a different character design and a very different attitude. Pay close attention to Lumina as she is a very important part of the story if you can get past her friend or foe persona, that is. She can be helpful in an instance and then a major nuisance just as quickly. Not to mention her connection with Lightning was the biggest surprise and the biggest highlight of the story for me. I honestly think that the characters in the 13 trilogy have never been all that. It didn't really... I don't know, there's something about this team which didn't click. There's something about it that just didn't hit the sweet spot. It didn't have that magic just like the story. But over time I actually grew to really like these characters, and I was actually very happy to see Vanille and Fang again, even though I really despise Vanille. I cannot stand that girl. But I was really happy to see her in this installation here, and she has changed much over the course of 500 years, as have the other characters. So my summation of the characters hasn't changed that much. I still wish it would have been a lot more beefier, say like the team we had in Final Fantasy X or 7 or even 8. But in all honesty, I don't take Square Enix games seriously anymore. I'm still waiting for that magic to come, but the characters have grown so much over time, and it's great to see them finally reach some sort of solace and some sort of conclusion, and that's what you're going to get in this game here. The gameplay of Final Fantasy XIII Lightning Returns is heavily polarized amongst other reviewers, some of which like some of the mechanics, some of which hate the mechanics, and I'm going to be starting with the mechanic that everyone seems to be hating at the moment, which is the Doomsday Clock system. The in-game Doomsday Clock runs constantly throughout your normal 7-day journey, and you must complete your tasks within this time period before being transported back to the Ark at 6 AM of every morning. Apart from completing the mandatory main quests, deciding how you will spend your final hours depends on you as the player. I honestly found this mechanic to be unforgivable in an RPG, where so much time needs to be devoted to side quests and leveling up your characters. But after the first couple of days in game, I realised that it wasn't as bad as I thought it was. You can extend the amount of time given in a couple of really cool ways. The best way is to offer spirit like Iradia to the holy tree Yggdrasil in the Ark. I'm hoping I'm saying that correctly. And this can be extended up to a total of 13 days. Iradia can be obtained by completing side quests throughout the game, each ranging in rewards and difficulty. Another way to maintain time is to constantly use the chronostasis ability, which will pause the clock momentarily and give you a reprieve when you need to make every single second count. Certain areas of the game world can only be accessed at certain times of the day, which further enforces you to manage your time wisely. Managing your EP or energy points was also a big challenge for me. This is very important to monitor, as it is used for all your special abilities in and out of combat, including the very important chronostasis ability. The time limit was indeed a hindrance for me at first, but I got used to it. I love the challenge it presented me. I've never been demanded this much intelligence in an RPG before, and believe me, it's really rewarding stuff once you get the hang of it. But would I like to see a Doomsday Clock in other RPGs? Maybe not. It was such a huge risk to take, but I think they pulled it off. And I still managed to squeeze in about 62 hours into my gameplay. Nextly, let's talk about the combat system. I really love the combat system in this iteration, as Lightning is the only controllable character. It makes perfect sense to turn her into the one-woman army, and that's exactly what she is. Players must always have 3 schematas, or guards on it at all times, and these can be switched to easily and freely at the touch of a button. Each guard offers their own unique look and abilities, which really gives you the feeling that you're creating your own fighting machine. Want a heavy-hitting commando, or maybe a lead spellcaster, or a tank with uber defense? The option is yours, and you have the ability to tailor Lightning to the way you want to. Lightning is also fully customizable in terms of equipping accessories, shields, rearranging colour palettes and adornments, with some having some very humorous and comedic effects. Lightning's outfits are also some of the most amazing looking costume designs I have ever seen before, and I found myself staring in awe at how rich and detailed these designs were. My favourites were the Equilibrium, Purple Lightning and Midnight Mode guards. Monster designs have been reworked and revamped, with certain monsters taking residence in certain parts of the world. Occasionally you'll stumble across Chaos Rifts, which makes the enemies stronger. And you'll also find the last ones, which are souped up versions of these monsters. These monsters can be met when you have brought a species to the brink of extinction and glow a distinctive hot pink colour. And these offer some truly one-of-a-kind rewards should you beat them in battle. These can also be challenged again to better scores when you next visit the Ark at the end of each and every single day. The actual combat system is fast-paced, it's fun and energetic, which was slightly let down by the stagger system in this game. Instead of a separate bar indicating how much time you had left to stagger the enemy, the stagger wave here will only increase if you make the attack at the perfect time or hit certain body parts of the enemy at a certain time. This mechanic works well enough once you get the hang of it, but I did feel that it worked better in previous Final Fantasy XIII games. Side quests are also a huge feature in this game, and for those people who despise these, you might want to look at another game entirely. As Lightning is a saviour of souls, completing side quests is the only way to grow stronger. Gladly, the side quests are actually well thought out, each with its own unique story, and are surprisingly meaty and offer some really hearty rewards. Some quests had far too much talking in my opinion, so be prepared to make acquaintances with the skip button. Sadly, customizing your weapons, shields and accessories won't become available until your second playthrough, so keep this in mind, but it makes the second playthrough all the more enjoyable and easier for you as well. I know that was a lot to digest in terms of gameplay, and believe me, I think there is more to discuss when it comes to the gameplay. But at the root of it all, at its heart, the gameplay is what really excited me the most about Lightning Returns. It's modern, it's fresh, it's fast, it's furious, it's everything I've wanted from a Final Fantasy XIII game, from the last 2 games it is. So the gameplay has come bounds and leaps, but trust me, the Doomsday Clock system is not as bad as what people are cracking it out to be. So give it a try, stick with it, and then you'll find out that it's actually not as bad as you think it is. But believe me when I say, it's a huge challenge, this game. It is a huge bloody challenge. The graphics of a Final Fantasy game is, to no one's surprise, has always been amazing, always left me in awe, and the Final Fantasy series has really made a name for itself in developing cutting-edge technology and graphics that just make us go ooh and ah. And I had a mixed reception to the graphics in this game, believe it or not, and I hope to explain why. Lightning Returns almost delivers on this ongoing legacy, and I say the word almost very loosely, as there are many advances in the visuals, but at the same time some very obvious flaws. Starting with the obvious, the game is very beautiful in terms of its sheer variety and scope. Each part of Nova Chrysalia offers its own unique look and feel. and different types of people who view the end of the world in very different ways. I will say though that there are some glaring inconsistencies with the world. I wasn't too impressed with the city of Luxurion, if truth be told. It looked rather bleak and run down for such a holy city, while the Wildlands looked incredible with its lush and varied locations, and this is just one example. I also noticed that some environments looked obviously downscaled and poorly implemented, some of which looked like models pulled straight from a PS2 game, but due to its sheer size in the game, I am willing to forgive Square Enix for this. I also noticed that NPCs, or non-playable characters, also have weird erratic behaviours. Sometimes you'll spot them running in a distance and then skidding to a halt in an instant. And they'll also start casually walking into you during a cutscene, which is guaranteed to give you a laugh for sure, but believe me, it becomes a nuisance over time. Areas of improvement are clearly the body and facial animations. Lightning in particular looks better than ever, with impressive detailing put on skin and clothing textures. The amount of care that also went into syncing the animations with the voice acting was also top notch. This may seem kind of silly, but I also really loved the way Lightning's fabric moved when she was either walking or running. Very realistic and very impressive. And finally, the CGI cutscenes were amazing as usual, and even though there are fewer in this game, they are still magnificent when you get to see them. The graphics are... what can I say? It's 50-50 for me. On the one hand, they still look spectacular, the facial models look better than ever, while non-playable characters and erratic behaviour of the AI can really put you off the quality of this game. So the overall presentation is mixed at best, but believe me, it's still a good looking game, and other than that, the shoddy PS2 looking models, I have really nothing to fault the game on at all. The soundtrack for Lightning Returns is composed by Masashi Himozu, and I don't know if I'm saying that correctly at all. I'll put his name here for all of you to see. And this soundtrack is really long, it's 5 hours long, but I've had the opportunity to listen to it from start to end. And I really love the soundtrack. I love the fact that they paid homage to the old soundtracks of previous Final Fantasy games while still maintaining its identity, bringing it up to modern times and offering us something new and fresh. I still love the old songs from the Final Fantasy XIII 2 soundtrack in particular. Yill's theme, which is absolutely amazing. The lyrical content in that song is perfect. I also really love Noel's theme. I've got a thing here for the characters' themes. There are others, trust me. Other standout tracks to me were Blinded by Light, which is a theme that has gone across all 3 games, so it's really great to hear that in the soundtrack as well. There's also a track called Lumina's theme, which is really amazing. It's really dark and foreboding. It reminds me of Lulu's theme from Final Fantasy X and also Seymour Guado's theme in Final Fantasy X as well. There's another track which I really like called Sunset Path. It oddly reminds me of playing Fable or Skyrim for some reason. It has a real rustic, a real earthy, a real home quality about it. I really love that track. You might want to listen to that one, it's really spectacular. And finally, I love the attitude and Equilibrium. It is a magnificent track. I love the power, the pulse, and the finesse behind that track. It really set the mood for Lightning Returns. And collectively, this is an amazing soundtrack. This is the best soundtrack out of the 3 that I've listened, because it still managed to collectively include the best songs from other soundtracks from the first 2 previous games, and offered something new and fresh. And there's a lot of new orchestral pieces in here which really excited me as well. So top marks go to the soundtrack. So my summation of Final Fantasy XIII Lightning Returns is that I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the time I put into it. This game took huge risks, but I've come to expect that from Square Enix. They've always taken some sort of risk in each and every single game that they make. For example, 13-2, when Sarah dies in the ending, I didn't expect that at all, and obviously that led on to Lightning Returns and we get given some answers. I really love the fact that Square Enix are still taking chances with the series and keeping us engaged, but this game is let back by some pretty obvious and glaring flaws, but that doesn't stop it from being enjoyable. I enjoyed it immensely. This game is a huge challenge. It further deepens Lightning's personality and persona, which I've slowly grown to love over time, and offers unique and interesting locations never seen before in a Final Fantasy universe. So would I recommend it to die-hard Final Fantasy fans? Yeah, of course I would. But don't be expecting the world from this, because it's not as good as Final Fantasy X or other games of future past, but I'm excited to see what Square Enix is going to come up with next. So Lightning returns, yes, and Lightning is one badass character. So that was my review for Final Fantasy XIII Lightning Returns. I hope you enjoyed it. I know this video went on for a long time. If you want to add in your own feedback about this game, did you like the Doomsday Clock mechanic or did you hate it? Was Lightning a good enough character for you? Was she able to pull it off in her own game? Let me know how you guys feel in the comment section below. I shall see you in my next video. Don't know when, don't know what, but I will see you next time. So stay safe, and until then, remember you soon.